Coca-Cola. For the big, for the small, the short, and the tall. Peacemakers, risk-takers. For the optimists, pessimists. For long-distance love. For introverts and extroverts. The thinkers and the doers. For old friends and new. Coca-Cola. For everyone. Pick up some Coca-Cola at a store near you.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
Unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello and welcome. It's The Last Show. I am David Cooper, a Canadian who lives in the U.S., so I will be celebrating American Thanksgiving with our foreign correspondent, Tony Five, who is in my apartment right now.
Hello, it's me. Yes, dear people, I am here with David Cooper sitting on his lap, so listen to us.
Yes, listen to us. Tony and I will be doing some special reporting on U.S. Thanksgiving throughout the week, but for tonight's show, here's something you'll learn. Imagine if just seeing Batman could turn you into a superhero. Okay, not a superhero, but imagine if just seeing Batman could turn you into a more charitable person. That is what psychology researchers found. They took a crowded subway car with a Batman in costume and without, and people in the car with Batman were nicer. So that study halfway through the hour. Let's just dive into the show, though.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
It's topical. Stranger Things, the very popular TV show, drops tomorrow night. And I'm here with Dr. Lee Kuhnle, political science professor at Humber Polytechnic. Check out his podcast. It's called The Uncover Up. It is Conspiracy Corner, and there are actual real conspiracies that are kind of the source material for Stranger Things. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, David. And you're right. It's kind of odd that I'm on a popular culture with a popular culture topic that's super topical because I'm normally the history guy. But
yeah, you come on and you're like, guys, have you heard about this amazing thing in the news? It's called the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then we talk about it.
That's me.
But this is exciting. Are you a Stranger Things fan?
I am a Stranger Things fan. I mean, anything with Winona Ryder in it kind of has got me already. So I was sold before I'd seen the show, but I was a kid in the 80s, and they really capture the feeling of that time period, and it feels nostalgic almost. It's like a contemporary nostalgia. So I just enjoyed for those reasons, and then of course it tickles all the conspiracy theory stuff, So I'm triply sold on this show.
It's sort of like if these weird paranormal things were possible, the way in which the U.S. government in that time would be researching them, it's kind of like accurate in a way. Like if there was some strange dimension and creatures and things to be researched, I feel like the way the show portrays it would be not too far from how it actually would go down.
You're right. And as a casual observer of the show, you could be mistaken for thinking it's sort of mystical. But the creators of the show actually wanted to go in more of a hard sci-fi direction. So it's not as though anything is from the kind of mystical paranormal. It's more sort of like if like the scientific experiments that ended up not having worked out, here's what reality might have looked like.
And so let's start with Project Stargate, because the U.S. government was actually investigating the paranormal. And that's sort of the source materials for the show in a way. Now, of course, these investigations, as far as we know, went nowhere because none of the paranormal things they were looking into were true and real and usable. But had they have been, you would have ended up with Stranger things than the show Stranger Things.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there's like sort of 3 buckets of source material, as it were. 2 of them are actual projects that the US government was running mostly in the 70s and into the 80s. And then a third one is a kind of more bizarre and most likely very untrue conspiracy theory that was also happening at the same time. As you say, one of the source materials is this Project Stargate. And in the show, you have, so we're not giving anything away. I mean, for those of you who
let's give it away. Bruce Willis has been dead the whole time. That scene at the beginning when Bruce Willis got shot, he died. And the kid can see dead people. Okay, it's a different show.
Yeah. So when I'm just giving you sort of the setup here. So if you haven't seen the show and are planning to watch it, don't worry. There's no spoilers. And nobody sadly sent me an early release of the new season, so I can't tell you anything about what's coming.
Rude.
But, right, rude, exactly. But the main, or one of the main characters is somebody who has escaped from a laboratory in the show. And who they've been doing human experiments. And this is a young girl. Her name is 11. And she has paranormal abilities, including psychic abilities. Well, this relates actually to, as you said, David, a project known as Project Stargate, which is an umbrella term for actually a number of different projects where the CIA, the DIA, Army intelligence, various different agencies were investigating for real whether you could weaponize psychic ability. And this has been picked up in a couple of different places. The George Clooney film, Men Who Stare at Goats, is related to one version of this project when the Army took it over. And the staring at goats part was to see whether you couldn't make the goats explode with your mind, right? So there were actually, and if you think about it, it would be such an intelligence coup, right, in terms of espionage, if you were able to like actually discover that psychic abilities are real and they could be utilized. Like now you could psychically project yourself over to the Soviet Union, to the most secret missile silos or the most secret Kremlin meetings, and to, be there and know what's going on. So it's a lot of kind of coherent motivations why they were looking into this. And yeah, the CIA made money available in the 70s for the Stanford Research Institute to really go experimenting and see if they couldn't find, whether they could find psychics and get them to use their abilities.
Was there some element of like thinking the Soviets were harnessing psychics, so they needed to compete with they ended up funding it because, if the Soviets have psychics, they'll defeat us in the Cold War. Was there an element of that?
Yeah, there always is, right? Because again, if you just take it seriously that this could potentially work, then even if there's the slightest bit of intelligence that the other guys might be doing it, you better get on it. Now, I can't verify the following story for 100% true, okay? So I just want to flag this.
My favorite kind. Please go.
But there is a potential that the U.S. disinformed themselves. And so here's the idea. What if we could get the Soviet Union to waste a whole bunch of money on research that was not going to go anywhere? This is how this version of the story goes. So in the 1950s, the CIA starts pretending that they're getting hits and having success with psychic research in order to trick the Soviets into doing it. Okay, then the Soviets start doing it because they're worried, right? Then the whole cadre of CIA guys who comes up with this, they retire or move on to other things. And then a decade later, new information is coming out of the Soviet Union that the Soviet Union is maybe having success with psychic research. And now the CIA is like, hey, we better get on this. And then they start funding Stargate. So there is a version in which the CIA kind of psyched themselves out on this topic.
I mean, I know you're saying it's not verifiable, but I love that it could be true. I think it just goes to show the awesome weight of bureaucracy and government inefficiency exists even at the most secretive spy levels. So is there an element of like astral projection or psychic projection in the show Stranger Things?
Yeah, well, especially with Al. Now, they inhabit a world. So this all happens in Indiana, but it's not our version of reality. So something has broken, and reality itself is a bit strange, but especially this one character, Al, she has a lot of psychic ability. So she has psychokinetic ability. She can bend things. She can psychically project herself to places. So she is sort of a kind of a smorgasbord of psychic ability.
All right. Well, we're talking the conspiracy theories, the real ones, the real government programs that are the underpinning of Stranger Things, a show being released tomorrow. When we come back, we will talk more about human experimentation programs that are depicted in Stranger Things. I'm here with Dr. Lee Kuhnle. It is Conspiracy Corner. More on this in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
So good, so good, so good.
Give big, save big with Rack Friday deals at Nordstrom Rack. For a limited time, take an extra 40% off red tag clearance for a total savings up to 75% off. Save on gifts for everyone on your list from brands like Vince, Cole Haan, Sam Edelman, and more. All sales final and restrictions apply. The best stuff goes fast, so bring your gift list and your wish list to your nearest Nordstrom Rack today.
Exploring both interstellar and interpersonal space-time continuums. The Last Show with David Cooper.
I know I said before the break, Stranger Things is coming out tomorrow, but what I meant to say was season 5. I believe it's the final season, and we're talking the real government conspiracies and real government programs that are the underpinning for this science fiction series. I'm here with Dr. Lee Kuhnle. It is Conspiracy Corner. Check out Lee's podcast. It's called The Uncover Up. Lee, welcome back to the show.
Thanks again.
So there's a lot of human experimentation, creatures, hybrids, things like this depicted in the show. Human experimentation is not something that the CIA has avoided over the years, is it?
Sadly, no. And the one that is most notorious and totally true, and which also has a kind of dark Canadian connection also in the show, is MK Ultra. And MK Ultra is, again, one of these umbrella terms for a whole bunch of projects, this time where CIA was looking into whether they could weaponize hallucinogenic material. I mean, they're always interested in weaponizing whatever the new thing is out there. And basically, it was a question of psychological warfare or chemical psychological warfare. Could you develop, say, something like a truth serum, where you could inject your spy with something or the opponent's spy, and then they would just have to tell you the truth? Or could you brainwash people? Or, it was that kind of stuff, which, again, has some reflection in Hollywood with ideas like the Manchurian Candidate. Like you create a brainwashed sleeper agent who then works their way up into the foreign enemy's political system, and then kapow, they are released with a trigger word, and then they go do their nefarious misdeeds. This kind of stuff was actually behind real human experimentation that was funded by the CIA, but it was often run by arm's length organizations. Again, here in Canada at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal was one of the main places actually that this was going down. And it's really sad. Like, they were often working with people in very vulnerable populations, and they were effectively doing medical experimentation, which reached the level of medical torture, where the kinds of stuff that they were experimenting on had nothing to do with what these people had come to a psychiatric facility for. Like, say, women with postpartum depression were then being put into insulin comas for weeks on end, given high doses of LSD with electroshock and, other kinds of things, which together was referred to at the time as psychic driving. This idea that you could sort of like brainwash somebody and then build them up again. Of course, they were able to sort of damage people's minds. They were not able to, as far as we understand, ever create any of the things that were hoped for. But as you said, David, in the beginning of the intro, the show sort of takes it for granted that these experiments worked, and so it's like
sort of like a parallel universe where some of these more supernatural and fanciful human experiments worked. And then what happens?
Yeah, exactly. Now, to make this connection like really with Canada and with the show, because I think the creators never said, look, we've modeled this guy on this guy, but there is a doctor in the show who Elle refers to as Papa because she has been brought up in this institution, and this is the closest thing she has to a father figure. In the show, the character's name is Dr. Brenner, sorry. But in real life, this guy seems to be modeled on the head of the Allen Memorial Institute, who was doing the MK Ultra experiments on behalf of the CIA in Canada, a guy named Dr. Ewan Cameron. And he was like cold and arrogant and aggressive and didn't really care about people.
You'd have to be
like,
to torture your subjects like that.
Yes, exactly. Although, not that I'm not at all defending him, but oftentimes people in the medical profession who are hurting people will say, well, but we're doing this for this greater good. Like they are going to get better or somebody's. So I assume he believed in what he was doing.
He believed if he could develop these products or these methods to help the U.S. government, with a truth serum, that it could end the Cold War or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Again, not justifying the behavior, but this was the rationale.
I completely agree with you. The man was a monster.
Okay, and so the parallels in the show are sort of like, well, if this guy had done his experiments and they had worked, this is the world we might live in.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the show, the way it works is it seems to take the MK Ultra experiments, the kind of like, we're going to expose you to drugs and to electroshock and insulin and sensory deprivation. But what they then do in the show is they get Stargate results. So that it's the paranormal abilities that are awoken by these MK Ultra interventions, if that is a sentence anybody's ever said before. I'm sure not.
No, brand new sentence. There's a forum on the internet called Brand New Sentence, and when people say something novel and weird,
okay,
yeah. But
I'll fill it out after the show.
Totally derailing. So some of these more fanciful, like UFO, alien creature, alternate dimensions, where does that come into the play? Was there government research into that? Like, what about this Montauk project?
Yeah.
This is one I've never heard of. I've heard of MK Ultra. I've heard of Stargate, but never this one.
Well, I'm happy for you, David, because I had to actually sit through and read the whole Montauk stuff, and it's not great. Okay, so Montauk now is not actually a government project that CIA or another intelligence organization was investigating. This is, as it were, it came from the wild. This is a conspiracy theory developed by Preston Nichols mostly. There are other people involved with it as well. And it is mostly, I would call it a work of fiction that passes itself off as a theory about the world. It is, I guess, for those of us who don't know much about it, it's sort of at the level of lizard people theory, that they're like shape-shifting lizards. In this case, there's interdimensional portals that can get you to pyramids on Mars and other places. And then there's like a grand computer in the universe that's God, and you can talk to it, and etc. And it's a rather confused, and there's also time travel and stuff in it. Now, the creators, the Duffer Brothers, actually were going to call the show Montauk, but apparently some legal things meant that they called it something else. Whenever in the show you get the kind of really bizarre stuff like monsters or interdimensional travel, that source material seems to come from Montauk. But they also said that it was more of a kind of an ethereal inspiration. That's my word. It's a sort of just a general inspiration, as opposed to, say, with MK Ultra or Stargate, they are actually, there's like Easter eggs throughout. I was stopping the show in preparation for the show and reading the newspapers that some of the characters were reading as they were doing their investigation. And there's actually references there to MK Ultra and secret psychic projects and this kind of stuff. The Montauk stuff, that's more the really sci-fi. And as far as I know, they are not making direct references to his material, at least none that I've seen myself.
Interesting. So it's a conspiracy theory it's sort of like it's a collection of writings from this individual, Preston Nichols, that sort of purports that we do live in a Stranger Things universe.
Exactly.
And how it would all work.
And that you could actually, if you buy his books, that you could gain access to it, and he might show you how. And of course, he has access to it.
All you have to do is send him money and boom, you're in.
Exactly.
Well, you can find out more about the conspiratorial underpinnings of Stranger Things on a recent episode of the Uncover Up podcast that Dr. Lee Kuhnle hosts with our friend Nathan Radke. Lee is a political science professor at Humber Polytechnic. Lee, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. I suppose you'll be watching Stranger Things tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah. It's in my queue. I can't wait.
All right. That'll be a fun Wednesday night for you. Lee, thanks again.
Thank you.
Coming up next, my favorite research that I've seen in a long while. Psychologists put a pregnant woman on a crowded subway train. Then they put a pregnant woman on a crowded subway train with a man in a Batman costume. Why? To see if people would be nicer with Batman. And they were. Turns out Batman makes you more charitable. Details in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Rinse takes your laundry and hand delivers it to your door, expertly cleaned and folded, so you could take the time once spent folding and sorting and waiting to finally pursue a whole new version of you. Like Tea Time You. Or this Tea Time You. Or even this Tea Time You.
So did you hear about Dave?
Or even Tea Time You.
So update on Dave.
It's up to you. We'll take the laundry. Rinse. It's time to be great.
The Last Show with David Cooper, where we apply quantum mechanical psychoanalytical astrotherapy to your problems.
Imagine if just seeing Batman could turn you into a superhero. Okay, maybe not a superhero, but imagine if just seeing Batman during your day could magically turn you into a better person. Now, that may sound silly, but it's exactly what researchers in Milan found, except maybe minus the magic part. I'm here with Dr. Francesco Pagnini, a professor of clinical psychology at the Catholic University in Milan, Italy, who did research on just this topic. Francesco, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, David.
So your experiment was fascinating. A crowded subway train, a pregnant woman who needed a seat, and Batman. It seems like the perfect premise for an experiment, although perhaps a little confusing. Do you want to explain to me what you tested?
Well, sure. So we were interested in testing whether something unexpected in a very predictable environment, such as going on the subway, would have given a different pro-social behavior outcome. So what we did was we did this study with two conditions. And one condition, I had a female collaborator who was pregnant, or not really pregnant. She wore a prostate belly, and she stepped on the subway. Someone else took note whether somebody left their spot or not, which happened around less than 40% of the time. So not too bad, not too good either. So it's just what it is.
You'd think it would happen more, just about a little over a third of the time someone's giving up their seat for a pregnant woman.
I think it depends on your trust in humanity, something like that. So not too bad, not too good. But the interesting part is the experimental condition. So the same student or a different one, we matched it multiple times, entered the metro, and from a different door, a researcher, it was actually me, dressed like Batman, stepped in. There's no interaction with the student. There's no, high sight. There's no smile, nothing. Just there as an unusual object to observe. And the simple presence of Batman almost doubled the chance that people left their spot. Now, we interviewed people saying, well, why did you leave your spot? Why did you do that? And in case Batman was there, we asked them whether they saw Batman or not. The very interesting thing is that in half the cases, they did not see Batman at all. But now that's consistent with the theory, because the idea is that we introduce something unusual. You see somebody dressed like Batman, that's not something you see every day. Um, and that changes your level of presence, your level of what we call mindfulness. You become more mindful of the environment, you become more mindful of the people around you. And so you more easily notice if there's a pregnant lady waiting for a place to sit. Now, that thing is also shared across people, because it's the same kind of effect when you walk down the street and you see somebody looking up. You look up yourself because, well, maybe there's something interesting there. It's the same kind of attention diffusion. So something like that.
Yeah, so everybody on the train is kind of looking around. They're surprised by something new. That's sort of like infectious. It's a social contagion.
It is.
You're looking around, looking for something new. Even though you might not see Batman, that shift in the people near you can translate to you, and then you're more likely to give up your seat to a pregnant woman?
Yeah, precisely. That's exactly the thing. And when you find something unusual, then you're more likely to, well, first of all, raise your eyes from your smartphone and look around and see there are people around you.
I gotta ask, how did you come up with this experiment? Did you just have a Batman costume lying around? Like, did you just want to dress up? I don't mean to make fun, but I'm just thinking, how did you even think of this experiment in the first place?
Well, you're not really far away from the actual reason. So, as a matter of fact, I did have a Batman costume, but I wanted a better one. And I thought, well, I'm a scientist. How can I combine these two things?
And get the university to pay for it.
Is that exactly? So I that's what I did. And of course I went through the IRB, which in Italy, it's the ethics committee. And at first they said, well, no, you're going to scare people dressed like that. And I had the permission from the police and from, the subway system. So everybody was okay with that. But the ethics guys, and I'm part of the board. So, I know what I'm talking about. And they were like, well, aren't you worried you can scare people around? Think about some old ladies. And I said, well, I'm going to smile. I'm not going to be a threat. I'm not going to be having a heavy face. So we came to this bargain. Actually, I was okay dressed like Batman, but I'll have to wear the cape. Not to wear the cape. The mask, not the cape, the mask. And so I kept it in my hand. And there was a sort of a compromise.
A compromise, yeah.
Yes, we made, but it was very realistic. And with the subway, with the trains going on, the cape floated a lot.
So it was very striking.
Yes, it was.
Was the almost double increase of people's willingness to seat a pregnant woman on a crowded train, if there was this social disruption, if there was this presence of Batman, did that surprise you that people were twice as likely, roughly, to be more charitable in that case?
No, that was exactly my hypothesis. Actually, I discussed that with my team, with my students. I discussed that in advance, and I also talked with my former boss at Harvard, Ellen Langer. We had this conversation several times, and many people were like, "No, Batman's going to distract people, so they're not going to notice the pregnant lady," and that wasn't the case. Actually, when you introduce something unusual, something interesting comes up, and it's very easy to understand when I asked you, you did your common route to go to your job, and you don't pay attention. So if you arrive to your job and I say, "Do you remember what you saw today?" You will probably look at me like, "No, what did I do? What was strange?" And then if something unusual happened, if you met somebody just like Batman, maybe New York, it's not so unusual, but...
Yeah, I was thinking on the New York train, seeing Batman on the train would be the least unusual thing you'd see all day.
Right. So maybe New York, we need to find something different. But in Milan, I can assure you that nobody wears like this. And actually, I got a certain amount of people asking for selfies and autographs also. So anyway, if something unusual happens, then you will probably be able to tell me not just that unusual thing that happened, but also something else. Like, oh, I met that person, I talked to them, they were saying something about this. Really not unusual things, But once you're, drawn in the present, then you start noticing.
Yeah, there's something to be said for something just jolting you out of your routine. And once you're out of your routine, you're more aware of your surroundings. And it's nice to know in that case, we're more likely to be altruistic, it seems.
Precisely.
Now, one Thanksgiving, I saw a guy, he was wearing a Santa outfit, ringing a bell, and he was holding the train security door open, letting everyone in for free, saying, "Merry Christmas, the subway is free." And I think he was drunk. He had a brown paper bag with a drink. And he was letting in businessmen, and everyone was just going into the subway for free, stealing the ride, I guess, high-fiving this guy. And it was so funny. I don't know if I did anything more altruistic that day. I paid. I didn't go in for free, but it really just warmed my heart. So it's precisely those moments that can sort of jolt us out of our routine and make us more charitable. What can we learn from this? How can we make ourselves a little bit more better people every day based on your research?
Well, there are many things that we can learn. Basically, the easiest thing we can do is to ask ourselves, what's new around us? Look around and say, what are 3 things that I haven't noticed before? What are 5 things that are just new here? And go with that.
Well, Dr. Francesco Pagnini is a professor of clinical psychology from the Catholic University in Milan, Italy. Francesco, I appreciate you coming on the show and talking about your research. It's certainly fun stuff. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
When ADHD comes up in conversation, the topic is often negative, the downsides, or people just talk about what treatments they're using. But what if there's a missing half there? It turns out folks with ADHD are more creative. They're more resilient. There are positive aspects of an ADHD diagnosis. Details in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Prepare to have your mind blown as we delve into the complexities of relationships, explore the cutting edge of science, and celebrate the bizarre and beautiful absurdity of the world around us. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
ADHD is usually talked about in terms of people who have its struggle, but there's more to the story. Let's explore the creativity, the energy, and the resilience that many adults see as surprising strengths of their diagnosis. Here with someone who's researched just this. Her name is Emilie Nordby, and she works at the University Hospital in Bergen, Norway, where she is a clinical psychologist. Emilie, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I think if we go on like social media or hear conversations in the media about ADHD, it's often the negative stuff that we're hearing about, or ways to cope with it that we're hearing about. We don't often focus on the positive things, do we?
No, most of the ADHD sort of narrative and the research has traditionally focused more on the difficulties, the challenges, and like you say, we don't often hear sort of the other side of things. So that's something I wanted to sort of dive into in this study.
I think it's really cool that you did those positive aspects. So what did you end up asking people who had it or doing to research this area?
Yeah, so I'm just going to give a bit of context for the study.
Please do.
Yeah. So this was actually a part of a larger clinical trial where we were examining a digital intervention for adults with ADHD. And as a part of the intervention, we asked our participants whether they experienced any positive aspects to ADHD. And if so, what were these positive aspects? So we had about 50 adults with ADHD who responded to this question. It was in written format. And then we analyzed those responses using a type of qualitative analysis named thematic analysis, which sort of looks for sort of common themes or patterns across the participants' responses. We had mostly female participants, which is not so surprising because this was an adult sample. So females are usually diagnosed later in life. But yes, that's what we did. We looked at their responses from that survey question.
And one theme that came up was this dual impact at the risk of taking a tangent. I think in a lot of areas, things that are weaknesses are also our strengths. For example, like I talk to every stranger I know, and that's a strength because it makes me good at my job, but it's also a weakness because it drives my girlfriend insane, me just talking to strangers all the time.
Yeah.
It's a silly example, but I think a lot of things that like can create negative areas in our life, like maybe hyperactivity or hyperfocus, can also be a superpower as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly like one of the core themes that we found was this duality in the core sort of traits of ADHD. So you have like the hallmark symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, which also can cause a lot of chaos, but they can also give some unexpected benefits that our participants talked about, like high levels of energy, being able to do a lot of things in a short amount of time, having sort of that drive, and also like the hyper focus that you talked about. Like if you're really engaged and interested in something, having the ability to focus on that for intensely and for a long time. A lot of people really mentioned the hyper focus as a positive aspect.
And can you tell me more about what some of your respondents or people said about creativity, like some examples of ways in which they find that having ADHD assists with creativity?
Yeah. So a lot of them talked about sort of creativity helping them starting new projects, maybe finding like unconventional solutions. This could be at work, for instance, or simply just making every day a bit more exciting. So that was some of the responses, but we also had some sort of highlights that it was not always appreciated. So even though they were creative and sort of came up with good solutions at work, for instance, the social context did not always appreciate it. So sort of thinking outside the norm could be both good and bad depending on the social context, I guess.
Another positive your study mentioned was this pursuit of new experiences, novel experiences, maybe even like hyper curiosity would be a way to describe it. Can you say more about that? I'm thinking of people I know who have ADHD. They are kind of more curious people seeking new experiences.
Yeah, that was something a lot of people mentioned, this drive for novelty, seeking new things, learning new things. And that sort of desire for learning also helped people gain a lot of knowledge in topics they might not otherwise had. And a lot of them describe themselves in this sense as more willing to take risks, which could sometimes lead to opportunities that they might not otherwise had if they didn't have that sort of willingness to take a chance.
Taking a step back from your own research and perhaps the motivations for your own research, if someone listening has ADHD or someone listening has a child or friend with ADHD, what would you want them to think about themselves? How would you want them to frame their illness? Is there a way to look at this more positively, thinking about it more as like a superpower than a super weakness, if you will?
Yeah, I think the sort of key is seeing the whole person, and that's what the narrative so far has not been that balanced. So that's sort of what we're aiming for with this research as well, is creating a more balanced view that, of course, acknowledges the very real challenges and struggles people with ADHD often face. But we also want to sort of help people identify their strengths, and those can be very individual in a sense. So something one person with ADHD might perceive as a strength, someone else might think is a challenge. Or so I think people sort of need to try to navigate that themselves and sort of look out for these things and try to identify them themselves.
To that end, a lot of your respondents talked about resilience. How would living with ADHD help build resilience in a person?
Yeah, so living with ADHD can mean that you have to face some obstacles. So you might be like criticism or stigma or feeling different from others. But some of our respondents also talked about how this can sort of make them stronger in a sense or more resilient or contribute to personal growth. Some reported that they felt more equipped, better at handling difficulties because they faced those before. And some described that they were sort of more accepting and less judgmental to others, especially others who were struggling. And also more accepting to themselves, having a more understanding of themselves. And sort of more being able to persist even though they were going through tough times.
Well, Emily, thank you for walking us through some of the positives here with ADHD. I think it's a great way to look at it and sharing your research with me.
Thank you so much for having me and having the opportunity to share some of my research.
Of course, Emilie Nordby is a clinical psychologist at the University Hospital in Bergen, Norway. Did you know The Last Show is available as a podcast? Wow! You can listen to whatever interviews you loved again, catch nights you missed, or check out some of our bonus podcast-only content, stuff you won't hear on this radio program. So you're going to want to head to www.lastshow.pizza, that's .pizza, not .com, to our website, and there you can find a link to the podcast, or just search David Cooper Last Show in your favorite podcast app. Subscribe. You won't miss anything if you do. Coming up next, a wolf, a crab trap, an amazing surprise. What looked like a wolf doing random damage to a trap was caught on camera. And it was a clever plan, a heist. Wolves are more inventive than you'd think, and details in a minute.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Global superstar and comedy sensation Kevin Hart returns for his 5th Netflix special, Acting My Age.
I'm not the same man that I used to be. I go down the stairs sideways. Go ahead, you in a rush? Go around.
With a fresh perspective on life, family, and getting older.
Older you get, the less you can have. Is it sesame seeds on that bun? Get it out of here!
Kevin's bringing his signature high-energy humor and physical comedy in a true return to his stand-up origins. Watch Kevin Hart, Acting My Age, now streaming only on Netflix.
Smart, sharp, and slightly unhinged. Late night's fresh perspective. The Last Show with David Cooper.
You know how the old saying goes, a wolf, a crab trap, and a surprise. Okay, maybe that's not an old saying, but what looked like a wolf doing some random damage to a crab trap was all caught on camera, and it turned out to be a very smart animal pulling off a clever plan, stealing food. And it shows how inventive wolves can be. They can use tools. I'm here with Kyle Artelle, an assistant professor in environmental biology at SUNY ESF in Syracuse, New York, who has studied just this and reviewed the footage. And Kyle, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So looking at this video, what was the moment when you first realized something unusual was going on? A wolf stealing from crab traps? Like what happened?
Yeah, I mean, almost immediately, the realization something important was going on kicked in. So, I mean, the video starts where she's swimming to shore with a float in her mouth and then proceeds to bring the float up the beach, place it down in a good orientation so she can then grab the line attached to it, and she can then start pulling the line. Then you see a crab trap emerge out of the water, and then she proceeds to take the bait cup from within that trap. And so the jaw dropped immediately on seeing that. The context is we were trying to find out who was damaging these crab traps. This was part of a Haystok-led European green crab program where the nation, in collaboration with some universities, but the nation is very much leading this, is trying to understand an invasion of European green crabs here, trying to monitor it and try to address it. And all of these involve trapping of the green crabs. And there was these traps on the beach. They're green crab traps that were being damaged repeatedly. And we were trying to figure out, well, who's doing this? Some of the traps were pretty high in the intertidal. So on a low tide, a bear or wolf could have easily walked up not that interesting necessarily. But some of the traps were in deep water, deep enough that it's never exposed on a low tide. So we were curious, what's going on here? Who is this? Maybe it's seals, maybe it's otters, maybe it's mink. So we put this camera up, or a couple cameras pointed at green crab traps, just to try to get any kind of inclination, any kind of insight into what might be happening. But when we opened up that camera, it's one of the first videos. We got our answer, and we got just that full sequence of the wolf pulling the trap out of the water, and it was not what we were expecting to see, to put it lightly.
And what constitutes tool use in animals, or in this case with the wolf? Like, why is this behavior so unusual, or something that we didn't think wolves did?
That's a great question. And of course, as scientists, we can get into semantics. And so there's a bunch of definitions of what tool use constitutes. One of the definitions is just using an external object to satisfy a goal, basically, which is clearly what's happening here. And kind of resonates with us in terms of a tool use. There's other definitions that are a little bit more restrictive that say, for example, maybe the animal has to create the tool. They can't just use a pre-existing tool, etc. But regardless of definition, I mean, clearly what was going on here was really sophisticated behavior. The wolf sort of had to, again, she started by swimming with this buoy in her mouth. She had to orient that buoy. She had to bring it to shore first in order to pull on the trap, to get the trap out of the water. The trap was not visible at the beginning of all this. She had to associate that floating buoy with a line, with a crab trap, with bait within. There's sort of this multiple steps required in seemingly in comprehension, and certainly in terms of what she was doing to get that bait. So really significant in just that this video captured such sophisticated behavior. Those who are familiar with wolves, that know wolves well, would not be surprised that wolves are intelligent. That's not news. And maybe even that they would be capable of this kind of behavior is maybe not all that surprising. But to just see the behavior, it's this whole new facet of behavior that hasn't been seen before in wolves. And in some ways, it really just opens up some questions as to what else is going on out there. What else can they do? What else could they teach us if we were to listen, to watch? What else are they capable of?
Well, to that end, we got the swimming, we got the figuring out how a buoy works, we got the lifting, we got the tearing. None of it random, all of it sophisticated, definitely smarter than anything I could do. What does this tell us about wolf cognition? What new things have we learned about the way wolves' brains work?
Well, again, so we've known that wolves are flexible behaviorally. We know that they're super intelligent. So it's not like there's this qualitative new insight that yesterday we thought wolves weren't all that intelligent, and today we think that they are. But here is just this new expression of that sort of cognitive sophistication. So if we think about it, this crab trap, is very new in the environment. It's very novel. This isn't something that wolves have evolved with for thousands of years. It's something that just showed up, and these traps have been used for the past decade-ish in the area, maybe a bit more. Used in a big way just for the past few years, where they've been used in large numbers consistently. And the wolves very quickly figured them out. This behavior was learned incredibly quickly. So I think in a lot of ways, it's just, this additional dimension into what they can do. An analogy might be that we know that humans are intelligent and we're flexible, but when we create a new invention, or when we create a new piece of art that we haven't seen before, or a new way of doing things, it reveals more about humanity. It reveals more about what we're capable of. It isn't that, we suddenly realize humans are intelligent. We've at least told ourselves that for a very long time. But when we are able to do new things, it's still really notable. And so there's a parallel there. And I think, the other piece, I keep saying people who know wolves recognize all this. What we were really excited about right when we first saw this video is that the video speaks for itself, is that you don't need to know wolves well, actually, to look at this video and get a pretty good sense of what's going on, to recognize that, like you said, she's very focused. Each of these behaviors seems very laser focused, and she is solving the problem the way that a human would. She's using the tool the way that a human would. So I think in some ways, maybe for those who don't know wolves all that well, we don't need to tell them wolves are smart. You can just show the video, and the video kind of speaks for itself.
Could it be a one-off genius wolf, or you really think this whole group is smarter than we thought, or at least using tools in ways that are more novel than we thought?
That's a great question. And I mean, all we can do at this stage is speculate. But there is another video where we see another wolf interacting with a trap. Unfortunately, these are camera traps, they're motion detected, and most of the action happens out of the frame. So we see the wolf pulling on a line. Then the video cuts, and 8 minutes later, there's two traps in front of the video now. We don't know if that particular wolf pulled a trap from deep water, or if it was in shallow water, or if it was even just elsewhere on the beach. We don't know what's going on there. But at least one other wolf is interacting with the traps and starting to pull on the line. So very much some of the behavior we see in that video. But we don't know. We don't know if it is only this particular wolf that has figured out how to do it, or if she actually learned it from her pack mates, or if she taught it to her pack mates. We really don't know.
Does observing this kind of behavior change how we should think about conservation? Like for a species that's experimenting and adapting and problem solving in ways we rarely get to witness?
So, I mean, I think the answer from sort of an ethical perspective is probably it shouldn't, because, other organisms, whether it's other people, whether it's other species, we should not decide if they should be treated properly based on how intelligent they are. That's pretty problematic.
Or how cute they are. I think that's another trap as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that is what we tend to do, right? And so, maybe I don't think it would be a bad thing if wolves now get more care and consideration based on this. If this just enters our imagination a little bit more, the way that chimps started to be treated very differently when Dr. Goodall made it very well known that they could use tools, right? That wasn't a bad thing that suddenly chimps got more of our attention and care. So, certainly, hopefully that happens, that folks think more and more deeply and are more curious and humble about wolves and other species. But with the caveat that doesn't suggest that animals that we currently think are not as intelligent should get less care.
Well, I'm here with Kyle Artelle, an assistant professor of environmental biology at SUNY ESF in Syracuse, New York. Kyle, where can people find out more about this project?
Yeah, so we have the Hechthoek Wolf and Biodiversity Project, which is kind of the broader project looking at wolves in Hechthoek territory. We have a website, placeofwolves.ca, where you can learn about the study and you can learn about the other work that we're doing.
Kyle, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing info about this kind of amazing video. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Coming up after the break, a deep conversation with someone who recently wrote that friendships fade when boys become men, and the cost and loneliness associated with that is enormous. Maybe as you, listener, have aged, you've observed something similar. So I'm looking forward to this chat. Hopefully some insights. You're not going to want to miss it. That's coming up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This episode is brought to you by Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels and music are made for each other. They share a rhythm in the craft of making something timeless, while being a part of legendary nights. From backyard jams to sold-out arenas, there's a song in every toast. Please drink responsibly. Responsibility.org. Jack Daniels and Old No. 7 are registered trademarks. Tennessee whiskey, 40% alcohol by volume. Jack Daniel Distillery, Lynchburg, Tennessee.
For those who know that questioning everything includes questioning this show's existence. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Deep friendships often fade when boys become men, and the cost on those men is enormous. Why do we choke off vulnerability, blur intimacy, and call it strength? Why are men lonely without their childhood friends? That is what we're going to unpack here with Sam Eagan, who's recently written on this. He's a reporter, a producer, a researcher. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
So, your own story. Did you have a lot of close friendships growing up that kind of faded into adulthood?
I actually kind of had a different experience, I think, than what I write about being kind of maybe not universal, but common. In this piece, I had a pretty sort of reclusive family, and I didn't have a ton of, I grew up in Salt Lake City originally and didn't have a ton of, I got a few friends, but didn't have a ton of really, really, really close friends. And then I found kind of for the first time in my life, like really close friendships. Actually in college, I was a Division I wrestler. And it was like I shipped off to the University of Wyoming, and it was the first time in my life that I was around 30 other guys who were like obsessed with this very niche sport and loved it as much as I did. And if you're playing a Division I sport, it's not like high school sports. It's just like you're training for 6 hours a day. You live together, you train together, you study together, you Like it's around each other 24/7 all the time. So like that was kind of the first experience that I had with like having really, really, really close friends. And it was interesting because it was very intimate, but it felt like it had been bought through this, like, wrestling is a very violent sport. It's very intense. It like revolves around this sort of culture of like domination and like beating people up and what you'd call like putting the pace on people, like wrestling them so hard that they get tired and their mind breaks. And it's like very like it's the most miserable sort of suffering oriented sport there is. You have the weight cutting. And it felt like I had like bought this like access to intimacy with these other men through like our shared suffering together.
I mean, that can be a great way to bond. And then, of course, the sport being, I guess, the stereotype of what we think of masculinity.
Indeed, yeah, it's certainly very, I think, homoerotic. And I think some of the like posturing around the violence of it was kind of like compensating for that, I would say.
Whenever I have professional athletes on, I always ask them about the locker rooms and stuff. Like, sports to me is very homoerotic, but I think that's a conversation for perhaps another time.
I was shocked once I left that environment and I moved to New York. And I was just like, I don't see other men naked anymore, ever. Like I saw 30 men naked every single day, and now I never see it. It's
a tragedy, really.
A true tragedy, yeah.
Did those friendships fade after like university, college, after you were in that world?
I wouldn't say they faded, but I moved here. I was like, I really want to be a journalist. I'm in New York. I moved to New York. I really wanted to be a journalist really badly. And what I found was like without access to that like environment of like this really intense sort of trauma bonded environment, like maybe the first 2 or 3 years I lived here, I was like really, really lonely. And I was really angry as a byproduct of it.
Interesting. Say more about that.
You know, I think I'm still unpacking why I was so angry, but I think I felt like I hadn't accomplished what I was supposed to have accomplished when competing at the Division I level. I was a pretty good high school wrestler and then like an okay college athlete. And I had a lot of like regrets around my sort of lack of perceived achievement, which I think a lot of men can connect to. And I was like, I had no money. I didn't have any friends. I was like leaning really hard on, I remember there was a point where I was just going like hinge dates every 3 or 4 days because I had like nothing to do. I didn't really know anybody. And I found myself like really intensely leaning on like dating and like romantic partners and kind of just going through like series, like 2 or 3 month situationship, a 2 or 3 month situationship, and they were like really intense, and I was like very angry, and then they inevitably broke down because they were like, "You're really angry and unpleasant to be around." And then I've worked to kind of like unpack that now, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I need to make some friends." Years ago, like one of the sort of piece that I did that launched my career was like, I've kind of come full circle with this piece with the Globe and Mail. I did a documentary for Vice, which was the title was something to the effect of like, "Why the hell is it so hard to make friends?" For a man.
Baked in that is that connection between rage and loneliness. Like, why the hell,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I just like in a very like verite like style, like documented myself throughout the day, like trying to make a new friend who was a guy. And it like kind of like the first time that I had like intellectualized this experience of like the kind of inherent uncomfortability for a lot of men, certainly not all men, but I think a pretty large subsection of men, the inherent uncomfortability with the vulnerability it requires to be like, "Hey, I don't know anybody. I'm lonely. Do you
want to hang out with me?
Do you want to hang out with me?" Which is like, "Do you want to connect with me?" And that like there's a deep vulnerability in that is like very terrifying, especially if you've kind of been conditioned to never sort of be vulnerable. Certainly the way that I was conditioned, or to just sort of never be vulnerable, and it was hard to do, but it was certainly illuminating. Yeah.
And of course, there's this temptation of the manosphere online that just kind of like perpetuates the masculinity, a way to feel powerful again. I don't know if it's the right place for men to be turning.
No, it's definitely not. And I think that a lot of what I always say about the manosphere is that like ultimately these people are like selling what they latch onto, rightly so, is the sort of misogynistic stuff. The Andrew Tate is obviously a alleged sex trafficker. This hyper conservative stuff, but like what it starts with at its root is like self-help content. It's like they are selling men this idea that like you will feel better if you do this thing, and the Andrew Tates of the world are saying if you return to a sort of like strange pseudo traditional, because it's still really not, version of like hypermasculinity, like you will feel better about yourself. And it's a farce. It's a fantasy.
So what do you recommend from your own journey to people that are lonely? Moving to a new city is something I did. I've done it 3 times in my life. Sorry, 2 times, 3 cities. I was in my first city. Not important. That first year or 2 can be very lonely, especially when you're single. What do you recommend to people from your story who kind of are struck by your journey?
I think that you really just need to just ask. It's frustrating how simple the advice is, and it's really just that you need to just like ask. Like you will be surprised how many people I think just like genuinely just want to have connection in their lives. How people don't feel like they have that, especially younger people. And like being willing to take the sort of like leap and putting yourself out there. Like I when I first started doing it, it felt like I was like pouring lava on my head or something. It was so deeply painful, but I don't think twice about it now. And it's everybody kind of wants and craves connection. And I think you'll be really surprised how receptive people are if you could just take the leap to be like, do you want to hang out?
There are people willing to take the leap and invest the energy and drive and courage to work out or do this, that, and the other. Why not do it when it comes to friend making? Why not say to the person that you casually know, hey, do you want to hang out sometime? It's even good to be rejected because then you realize that's not a big deal at all.
It's just it feels so much safer, I think, to lean on the sort of like hyper individualism. And this is why so much manosphere content revolves around fitness. It's like you're leaning on the last thing that you have control over yourself that nobody can take from you, no matter what, is your body. You can live in the most evil, hyper capitalist society imaginable, and they can
like the United States. Sorry, that was
sure. And they still, as of now at least, can't take your body from you fully. And so it's like part of why I think that's why people lean on like the fitness stuff so much, because there is not none, but there's far less inherent vulnerability to that. It's even though it might feel harder to wake up at 5 a.m. and go for a run and lift twice a day than it is to like ask someone to go get lunch with you. It's easier in some ways, I think. And it certainly feels a lot less scary for some people.
And the idea of being vulnerable like that as being coded as feminine, something not for men to do, is kind of wild to me, but some people do believe that.
It's fun. Like I read this in the piece. I remember when you say that, it makes me think about something that we would like talk about a lot in the wrestling university I went to was like the worst thing that you could be, like the ultimate insult was to be like a victim. It's like if you like let somebody beat you up, if you let someone sort of like impose their will on you and like throw you around in a match, you're being a victim. And which is like there's an inherent sort of like feminine aspect to that. It's like the worst thing you can do is like open yourself up to like violence, whether it's physical or spiritual or emotional, so you're just kind of like forced, like hemmed into this like wall of like emotional armor.
Well, Sam Eagan's piece is called Deep Friendships Often Fade When Boys Become Men. We need a cultural shift for the good of us all. You can read that in the Globe and Mail. Sam Eagan is a reporter, a producer, a researcher. Sam, I've appreciated the chat. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Coming up, a serious topic that deserves a closer look. Certain ethnic minorities pay a bigger share of their income just to keep their houses heated. Why? Why do certain groups pay more for utilities?
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
I am so excited for this spa day. Candles lit, music on, hot tub warm and ready. And then my chronic hives come back. Again, in the middle of my spa day. What a wet blanket. Looks like another spell of itchy red skin. If you have chronic spontaneous urticaria or CSU, there is a different treatment option. Hives during my next spa day? Not if I can help it. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
The last show with David Cooper. Procrastinate your life away with us.
In the U.S., certain ethnic minorities pay a bigger share of their income just to keep their houses warm. To put it plainly, black families pay more for heating. It is a costly inequality rooted in old housing practices, rental barriers, and more, and it deserves a closer look. So let's take one with environmental studies professor at Binghamton University in New York, George Homsy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the basics here. An energy burden on a household. Why is it a good lens for looking at like inequality, and also what is it?
Okay. Well, an energy burden is a simple concept. It's the idea that it's just a share of your income that goes towards energy, towards electricity, towards water heating, towards heating your home. It's an interesting concept because the more you pay, the greater share of your household income that goes towards heating, goes towards these energy uses, the less money you have for something else. And so that something else might be food or medicine. And the U.S. government had done studies in the U.S. that showed that people were actively making trade-offs with their medicine and with their food when they're in lower income brackets. What's interesting in terms of inequality is that I'm looking at and interested in the issues of energy justice and environmental justice. And that concept is about, do certain groups suffer more because of their status as a minority group, as a low-income group, or something like that? And this was a nice set of data to look at because I'm interested in, is it just because African-American families in the U.S. have lower incomes on average that they have a greater energy burden? Or is there something else there? Is there some intersection with race? And that's what I really wanted to examine in this case. And evidence has started to show that there is this intersection, that it's not just the low-income nature of the household, but there's something else about race that makes them overburdened.
So how did you go about looking at that? Did you look at what the average cost of energy in various regions and then look at the demographics of those regions? Like, how do you come to a conclusion like that?
So what we did was we looked at census tracts across the United States. The U.S. Department of Energy had put together average energy burdens of census tracts. And so then we took and this like 68,000 census tracts. And so we took every census tract and we classified it as whether it's a majority Black census tract, majority white census tract, majority Latino census tract, and so on. And then we said, well, the average energy burden across the U.S. is 3.2%. For Black families, it's almost twice that. And so, first we were able to see that in our data. And that is something that on a smaller scale has been largely known before. But we were able to do it across the whole country, which was the first step.
And so what are some of the factors that come into play here? Is it older homes? Is it discriminatory practices of utility companies? What were some of the reasons for this gap and this larger number?
Well, and that's the second part of the research that we did, is we wanted to say, well, what could it be that put the Black families at such a disadvantage? And what we were able to do, communities are very complicated places, and it's really hard to get data on many aspects that certainly would be pushing on this problem for all 68,000 plus census tracts. But what we were able to do is look at the age of housing and look at whether people are owners or renters. And we found, not surprisingly, that Black families, Black majority census tracts tend to have older homes first. And older homes tend to be less energy efficient. In the census tracts with the older homes, their energy burden tends to be higher. And so it makes sense that if Black families tend to be in these places, that they will tend to have higher energy burdens because of their housing structure. The other interesting thing that we were able to look at was whether they rent or own. And renting and owning is a challenge because if you own your own home, you have the incentive and the ability to upgrade it. So you pay your energy bills and you can put more insulation in or fix your windows or change your appliances. But if you rent, you pay your energy bills, but it's the landlord in the United States. 9 out of 10 renters pay their own energy bills, but it's the landlord that has the power to put insulation in the home because it's their building. And so they don't have the incentive to upgrade their structures because they don't pay the energy bills, they being the landlords. And the renters don't have the power to put insulation and change their appliances and things like that. And so it turns out that in majority Black census tracts, they have higher percentages of rental units. And so these are two factors that really come into play for, we think two of the many factors that come into play for higher energy burdens.
It's kind of interesting. Would incentivizing landlords in these areas to upgrade their insulation, upgrade their appliances be a quick fix, or is there more to the story than that?
Well, that's another paper that we're working on that just came out, separate from this one, which does look at can local governments do to push renters push landlords to upgrade their apartments. And it turns out that incentives sometimes work, grants sometimes work. The community that's been the most successful at this what they've done is they've required landlords to do it every time they get the rental units inspected. So some communities in the United States have rental inspections, and usually they just do it to make sure that the roof's not leaking, there's nothing toxic in the house. Well, they've added to this the idea that they need to increase energy efficiency and water efficiency. They've added this to their rental inspection. And every time they do a rental inspection, they expect a little bit more out of the landlord. So it's not like they're saying you must hit X mark on X date. They actually make it so that landlords can do it. And it's harder to resist because they're not forcing it on them all at once. And they've been very successful in converting tens of thousands of units to be more energy efficient. And that regulatory approach, I think, is the one that's most effective. The other things can help, but the one that we found that seems to be most effective is this regulatory approach where you build it into this rental registry.
Is this what you would advocate in areas where this discrimination shows up in the numbers, that jurisdictions do this? Would that be the big takeaway from some of your research?
I think that would be if this was the only factor, I think that would be the best way to do it. Of course, imposing a rental registry in some communities is very difficult. I mean, there's a lot of political factors. I would not say don't do incentives. I would not say don't do grant programs. I would not say don't do education. I would do all of those. But if a community has a rental registry program and can add this to it, I think that would be the most effective way to help all renters, including those that are in Black families.
And if you could design like an energy efficient program that didn't discriminate like this for the whole country, what would you suggest? Like what recommendations?
Oh, if I were designing it overall, and other countries do this. I mean, I would use the rental registry program. So France is imposing a new rental registry program, in essence, the energy efficiency standards. The UK has had one for a few years, and they're upgrading their standards. I can't remember. I think it's 2030 maybe. I mean, they're doing this right now and pushing standards across the whole of these countries to be more energy efficient.
Well, George, thanks for talking to me and educating us about this problem. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thank you for your interest.
George Homsy is an environmental studies professor at Binghamton University in New York. After the break, gambling. How much does a good win mess with your judgment? Like when you're up and it feels like it's the house's money, not yours. Are you more likely to be reckless? Turns out, yes, but it depends on your personality type. We'll go over a study that digs into just this in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Transform your home during Blinds.com's Black Friday Super Sale. Get up to 50% off site-wide, plus huge doorbuster deals on popular styles. Go DIY and do it all 100% online, or choose white glove service with expert design help and professional installation. Both backed by Blinds.com's 100% satisfaction guarantee. Blinds.com's Black Friday Super Sale is here. Save up to 50% site-wide and get a free professional measure. Limited time offer, rules and restrictions apply. See Blinds.com for details.
The day is done. We're just getting started. The last show with David Cooper.
How How much does a good gambling win mess with your judgment? Well, tonight we're going to look at why some people gamble even more after a victory, but how your personality and your intelligence can reshape your choices after you win. I'm here with Dr. Jussi Palomäki, a cognitive scientist and gambling researcher at the Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare, who has done research in this area. Jussi, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
So, for someone unfamiliar with this research area, what exactly is the house money effect? What's going on when we win?
So, the house money effect is what we might call a decision-making bias, like a financial decision-making bias that has been known to us for several decades. It's an effect whereby after winning in a gambling environment, you typically tend to take more risk. And any bias that we know of several biases in financial decision making, and a bias is essentially just like a predictable systematic deviation from some behavioral pattern or a preference shift in some specific situation. So here, the house money effect simply means that if you're winning, it feels like you're gambling on house money or with house money, and it makes it easier to take more risk and bet more. So that's essentially what the effect is about.
The money feels like it's not yours. It's winnings. It belonged to someone else, and you could be more riskier with it. Is that kind of the bias?
Yeah, exactly. It's, I guess, a good way to look at it is to think from like an emotional aversion to losses. So when it's not when you feel that it's not your money that you're gambling with, it kind of reduces that mental aversion to losing. So the pain of losing is less when you're gambling with someone else's money or money that doesn't really feel like it's your money. It's a somewhat similar effect to, for example, gift cards. So gift cards tend to take away the pain of paying in a sense. So if you get a gift card, it's not really real money, and it doesn't really pain you to spend it away. But yeah, we typically have an emotional aversion towards losses. So we don't really like losing. If we lose 100 euros, it feels worse than winning 100 euros feels good. But when we kind of segregate a specific lump of money as something that's not really ours, then it doesn't have that similar impact in terms of loss aversion. It's another example would be to say that it's easier to spend like tax returns than the same amount from your retirement savings or something. So it's segregated, and it's mentally kind of put into a different box in a sense. And you're mentally segregating these different funds into different places, which reduces your emotional attachment to it in a sense.
So when you're up and you got that extra money, that house money, if you will, and your study looked at people betting on horses, as I understand it, let's say you've won $100. What are people most likely then to do with those winnings? Are they more likely to be reckless with it, to bet it, to lose it?
So in our current study, we're really looking at averages here. So I'll just very quickly sort of run you through our data set, because this current study is really much about the data sets. So we got our hands to a rich combined package of data. We had personality traits and cognitive ability tests from the Finnish Defense Forces. These were filled by conscripts a few decades ago. So sort of like pen and paper forms and psychometric measures. Then we had demographic background variables, so a lot of information on their background, like education, income, and so forth. And then we had horse betting data across one single year. So all the bets made by all individuals in this particular online platform on all of the days through the year. And we combined these data sets to have some insight into not only kind of like actual observed authentic betting behavior, but also how various different psychometric traits and psychological variables might influence decision making in this environment. So obviously we had a lot of individuals, so the overlap in the end ended up being about 11,000 individuals. So there's a lot of variability. Some people bet a lot of money and others not so much. As some people play every day of the year and some only once. So it's very difficult to say what it actually means for a single individual. So the averages don't necessarily reflect your just a randomly picked individual among this group. So just to clarify, this is a large data set, and we're just looking at these tendencies, like overall tendency, and whether or not there's like a bias or a deviation from like a systematic behavioral pattern that we observed at the higher level in the data.
Got it. So on an individual level, there may be variance, but the overall trend, what were people likely to do with winnings, with house money?
So yeah, there we did observe a clear effect. So we operationalized a house money effect by simply looking at like differences between two betting sessions or two betting days. So if you ended up winning on a given day, so day one, you were more likely to bet more on the next day, and you were more likely to return betting sooner had you not won. So if you win on the first day, then the kind of the distance to the next betting session will be less. So you're more eager to come bet again and play more. And your bet sizes, your average bet sizes are also going to be higher. In terms of percentages, we're talking about 43% higher. So if you win, your bet sizes are on average 43% higher on the next day than if you don't win. And the days between sessions, about 17% fewer days between sessions if you win on the previous session.
Was there any link between personality type or any other things that you found in people who were more likely to bet more after a winning?
Yeah, so we found a quite clear effects to that end. So it's called like a moderation effect, means that the house money effect was stronger or more pronounced for individuals who had high scores in extroversion, means that they were sociable, they were reward dependent, and the effect was less prominent for individuals with higher cognitive ability. And
I'm an extrovert and I'm not very smart. This is why I avoid casinos, you see.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a good idea. I mean, it's usually a good idea in general to avoid casinos if you don't like losing money, because that's what's going to end up happening unless of course you play poker or some other game where you can actually make some profit. But also conscientiousness or diligence and dutifulness protected you against the house money effect. So essentially the effect whereby you're more likely to bet more and return betting quicker was pronounced for individuals with low IQ, low conscientiousness, and high extroversion.
Now, if I, let's say, win $100 on one day, if I'm more likely to come back and bet the next day, even if I lose that $100, does that effect still exist? Like, will I end up losing more than I won, or once I'm back to zero, has it reset and the effect no longer works?
It's very difficult to go into this level of depth based on our current study. It's really
got it.
Although it's a rich data set and it's a kind of complicated analysis. Yeah, we can't really tell based on this particular study how these individuals might continue playing after. So it's essentially just looking at the difference between your average day and the average day following that day.
Got it. Well, Jussi, thank you so much for talking to me about the research. This was interesting. Thanks for being on the show.
Cheers. No problem at all.
Dr. Jussi Palomäki is a cognitive scientist and gambling researcher at the Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare. That's a wrap on the night. That's a wrap on the show. Don't forget our podcast. You can subscribe to it if you search David Cooper Last Show in your favorite podcast app. I'm looking forward to doing some reporting here for U.S. Thanksgiving with my buddy Tony 5 over the next few days. We'll be back tomorrow night. I am David Cooper, and this is not the first show. It's the last show, in case you were wondering.
There are streaming services, and then there's Stack TV. What you want, when you want it. Action, comedy, drama, reality, all when you want it. Dive into Rick and Morty's latest season. Cast off with new seasons of Survivor and The Curse of Oak Island. Or stream binge-worthy gems like The Paper and All Her Fault. All when you want it. This fall, Stack TV has what you want, when you want it. Visit stacktv.ca for more information and start your free trial.